Is going on, fellow Gaslanders? It's your boy Foe, and I'm coming at you with another episode. And I got a guest with me, and it's the Vengeful Raider from Facebook. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, buddy? Good to be here. In the old faux render channel. Yeah, it's cool.
So, dude, tell me, man, what have you been up to, and what are you working on in GasLands at the moment?
Ooh, that's a good question. Currently, I'm working on a couple of builds and stuff. I want to get some build videos going on my channel and stuff, like, guides and whatnot.
Actually, before we get into all that, hold on.
Yep.
I just skipped over a major thing. Do me a
No
favor.
problem.
So, we know you got into GasLands, right? You got
yeah.
a couple of your cars are actually in the new Time Extended 2, I believe,
That's
right?
the one. Yeah, the Barracuda Trooper. That's the ticket.
That's super cool. And how did you get into gaming, man? Like, what led you to find GasLands?
Ooh, that's actually an interesting one to answer. I love tabletop games because there's more depth there, in my opinion, to online gaming because of things like the social contract. When you sit down to play a tabletop game with somebody, you both have an understanding that you're both there to play a game. You're both there to enjoy it and have a good time. If the other person's going to be a bad sport, well, then they're not going to have anyone to play with, put it that way.
Very true.
Yeah. And how I got into GasLands was I was playing a couple of games like Warhammer 40K and stuff, and I don't do much of that anymore. But I was doing some 40K, and I went to this place called Dogsphere where they originally did an original GasLands run when it was like first being fleshed out and whatnot.
Oh, that's cool.
And I just overheard a couple of people playing GasLands, and I looked over my shoulder, and I was like, ooh, what is this? And lo and behold, I saw these little matchbox cars going around this track, shooting the hell out of each other and killing one another. And I was like, yep, this is my jam. This is where I belong.
Exactly. I think that's everybody's like first reaction to it. It's like you walk into the game club, or you like look online and you run into it and you're like, what is this? Because you see everybody just having a good time. You know, when you see people playing GasLands, it's one of those things. You walk in the shop and you have everybody playing their games, and there's like there's like things going on. People are talking, people are laughing. But when you get to the GasLands table, it's like everybody. It looks like everybody's just having a great time. Everybody's cheering. Everybody's rolling dice, and just they're more vocal. It just seems like everybody's just having like a super great time.
Exactly.
And
That.
And then you look over and you're like, what are these cars, man? These are awesome. And then they tell you, dude, it's a Hot Wheels. And you're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh, I know exactly how you feel. Also, with GasLands, it's one of the few games where you could be getting absolutely destroyed, but you'll be the one laughing the hardest. And
Exactly.
I love that because I was sat there playing my game of Warhammer 40K, and my opponent was using this tournament list, you could say, and I was just getting smashed. And I was like, oh, this is not any fun. How much longer have I got to be here for, kind of deal? And I saw these guys playing GasLands, and they were all laughing, and I was like, oh, man, gotta get me some of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy about that game? What makes it so fun is I didn't think I was gonna like the respawn rules. Like, I normally don't like respawn rules, but in GasLands, it works perfectly. It's one of those things where everybody's having such a great time, and it allows the player that loses all their cars to still be in the game, which is great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It grants that guy a chance to at least, get back in the game, even if it's to drive the wrong way around the circuit to kill the guy first.
Exactly. Like, it lends to like the heart of the game, which is super cool.
It is pretty great. And how about those time extended updates? They're pretty something, eh?
Dude, time extended. Let me tell you something. The amount of content you get in each one is like I would pay for that content. You know, for the amount they give you and they give you for free. I would honestly, like, if they said, you know, this is $5, I would pay it. Or, you know, whatever it is, I would pay it, you know?
Yeah, precisely, right? I mean, it's the rules are incredibly detailed in terms of they make sense, they're fun, and they add a whole new dynamic to the game.
Exactly. It's a full expansion. And Time Extended 2 was just amazing.
Oh, yeah. Harpoons.
Well, you got harpoons, you got all these weapons, and it just wound up I was floored by how much information was in Time Extended 2. A new sponsor. It was crazy.
Yeah, precisely. And that new sponsor was it was just what I was waiting for, and I can imagine a lot of other people out there, some people watching would have been like, yes, that was the sponsor, you know, that they've been waiting for.
Yeah, pirates? I think so.
Exactly, right?
I mean, I already had ideas for like a pirate team before you were even talking about that. And when I saw on the forum, not the forum, I saw on the Facebook when they were having the next, you know, contest to get like one of your cars into the next expansion, and it was pirate themed, I was all about it. I had to make something up for it. And I had a total blast doing it. And the next expansion is like dinosaur, like you have to make a Truckosaurus type thing.
Oh yeah, Monster Truckosaurus.
Exactly, and I've been seeing a lot of cool things creeping up on the Facebook with that. It's a little bit it's that challenge is a little harder than the last couple, so I'm pretty pumped to see what's going to come out of it. I actually finally got an idea down for what I'm going to do, so we'll see how it turns out. Oh, that's
cool. I look forward to seeing that. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. We'll see. But I want to get back into this social contract talk.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you were mentioning that, and you were absolutely right. Like, social contracts in gaming, especially like tabletop gaming, is such a big deal. To give you an example, like Magic the Gathering, the mode where it's called Elder Dragon Highlander. So it's basically a deck of 100 cards, and you can only have one of each card, and it's a super fun way of playing that game.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit down with 4 players, because usually you play a 4-player game, and you sit down with everybody having the social contract in mind. And it's the same for any other tabletop game, where you're going to sit down and all the other players should know is you're going to make a list, or you're going to come to the game where you want to win the game, obviously. That's fine. But you don't want to make the game miserable for other players.
Yeah.
So you're not going to try and come with, like, say in Magic, you know, a deck that just comes down and does like an infinite loop combo in the first 2 turns, and the game is over. Because it's not a fun game, you know, and that's why I actually mentioned that mode, because in regular Magic, a turn 2 win, that's fine. You know, you could re-rack the game, you're playing a regular game. But when you sit down with 4 players, and these games tend to go a little longer, and when someone gets knocked out of a game, you know, they're basically now sitting around while the other 3 players finish that game. And if you knock them out like turn 2 or 3 with some kind of combo that's like super cheesy, it kind of just feels bad, because now you have that person sitting around while everybody else is playing for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine.
And when it comes to tabletop games, you know, they tend to last a little longer. So if you're playing a game where like the whole entire game is just you crushing the opponent with like certain rules that might be broken, or you're taking advantage of a certain loophole in the game, it makes for a miserable game for the other player.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's no fun, and it just becomes well, that person's now going to be deterred from even playing that game in the future. Even like they could lose interest in it, thinking if
You
this is
could
what people do.
exactly right. Like you could actually lose a player to like things like this for sure.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, but in all circles, you will get people like that. But the thing I love about Gaslands is it's so expertly put together in such a way that it's a lot harder to find those people, and it doesn't really attract those kind of types. You know what I mean? The ones who just want to ruin your day because they can.
What
Yeah.
I've noticed so far, like everybody that I've played with, it's a fun time.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You know, and like Warhammer 40K, you know, when you went to a tournament, you know, most everybody was cool, but you did run into like the power gamer type or just the type that's just sore losers. Like, you know, that isn't fun to play against either. Like, part of the social contract is also just keeping up a good attitude over the game, whether you're winning or you're losing. You know, no one likes a sore winner, obviously. But playing against a sore loser isn't a good time either. Like, it actually makes you feel bad for winning the game, which is the goal.
Yeah.
You know,
It makes you feel awful.
exactly. Both people are trying to win, and it makes you feel bad.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and it depends. Like, and there's all different types of sore losers out there. You know, you got the guy who, after a little bit, just starts to roll his dice like he's trying to throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. You know,
I know that
he's
guy.
chucking
I know
dice,
that
or
guy.
he literally picks up his dice and throws them across the game club.
Oh,
And then everybody around it is like, okay, dude, like, chill out, you know?
yeah.
Or you
Yep.
got, like, the dude who just starts blaming everything in the world under the sun but himself. But the things he did in the game. He's like, oh, man, I can't roll dice. Like, every time I roll, this is ridiculous. I can't roll nothing good. I can't flip a card that's worth anything. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
You know,
exactly it.
You're rolling like a maniac. Like, you can't roll nothing less than this. It's like, dude, it's like, you're just noticing all this because you're losing, and it seems like that. You know,
Yep.
it's totally not the fact that you took your unit and you put it here, which was in direct line of fire to this, right? Like, it's never that. You know, it's always
No, it's
the
never
dice.
a flawed battle plan.
Exactly. It's always the dice, or you're rolling good, or he's rolling bad, or vice versa.
Yep, that's it. I tell you what, though, this is a funny story for you. I knew a guy that was always losing Warhammer 40K. He was like, "Oh, my dice rolls are horrendous," and he would literally, you know, like the old table flip type, you know what I mean? Completely lose his rag. And I got him to play GasLands just once, and he just destroyed everybody and was having such a blast, and he loved it. And we were having fun with him. And that's something we hadn't been able to do on tabletop with this guy in a long time. And it was really good because it brought us back together, you know what I mean?
Yep. Exactly. And, you know, the rules also lend to it. Like, you got a bunch of randomness to the rules at times.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, there's just something about toy cars, dude. It's just something about toy cars where, like, how can you get mad at it?
Yeah, it hits a chord and brings you back to your childhood.
It does. It hits you, and that's what I think it is. It's like, and I said this a couple of times, it does. It hits that chord. It brings you back to your childhood, so you're in a better mood about it. And also, I think the financial obligation has a lot to do with it because, you know, when you show up to a place and, you know, Hot Wheels cars cost, what, $1 a piece? So your total investment into the game is like $25, say, after you buy the book, templates, and a couple of cars.
Yeah,
So you're not as angry.
exactly.
You don't have as much vested. When you show up to a game and you spend $500 on an army, and you can't win a game with that army, it tends to it tends to hit a little deeper. You know,
It does. It hits you right in the wallet.
it hits you in the wallet. It hits you in the soul, dude. It just it could be soul crushing.
Exactly.
You know, you invested not only all that money, but when you paint an army for a game, It's a lot of time too.
That is exactly right. And on the subject of building and painting things taking a long time, this is something I'd like to say just in case there's any new players listening who might be maybe intimidated thinking they have to glue weapons on. They don't have to, especially with like the new time extended. There is so many like, crew weapons. If you want to just say you guys have got guns on the inside of the car because maybe you're more of a what you see is what you get kind of thing, you can just say new crew fired weapons. They've got submachine guns, shotguns, or rifles. You know what I mean?
Or it's like a secret agent car, man. It has compartments.
Yeah.
They pop out, shoot, and go back down.
Exactly that. So there is something for everybody in GasLands. Never be intimidated by it, even if it looks like you see all these things on Time Extended or on the Facebook group that look completely insane. Don't think you have to compete with that because everybody brings something new to the table, and that's what it's about.
Exactly. And I'll be honest with you. There's never a time when like I show up to a game and like there's like someone who brings a car which isn't painted or like converted to like super high levels, but they slapped a couple of guns on. Like I don't even look at it a second glance. Like I think it's perfectly fine. Like you don't got to be a world-class painter. You don't got to be a world-class modeler. Just get in there, put some cars on the track and let's play.
Exactly that. You can just literally you could buy the box of cars in the store if your buddy's got the rules and the templates and the dice ready to go and you don't have an army and he doesn't have any spare cars. Just drop by a store, buy maybe a 3-pack or a 5-pack or whatever of cars. You arrive, open them up there and then on the scene, and then boom, you've got your army. I haven't seen anyone able to do that for like
that's
say
how I snag
$5.
players all the time, dude. I snag players all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll come, and when I come down to the shop, I'll bring a bunch of Matchbox cars, like a bunch of Hot Wheels and Matchbox, just extra ones, and I'll let them play a game, and then at the end of the game, I let them keep that car. So it's like you kind of like got them now because they kind of grow an attachment to that car because it was their first game, they had a good time with it, and now you give them that car. So what do? They go home, they have the car, they're like, you know what? Let me work on it. And they might throw some weapons on it. If they play other games, they might have access to other bits. Because if you're picking up players at the local game shop, they're into other games.
Yeah.
And you could hook them, and they just get hooked. And then
that's exactly it.
Following week, they come back, they have that car, it has weapons on it now, it's all painted up, and they're just chopping at the bit to play another game because now their car is all set up the way they want it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea. I might have to try that because what I do with them is slightly different. It's more of a thing for guys who are already playing the game. But I build multiple teams, and I'll bring the teams along for them to try out maybe a Rutherford team, a Warden team. Let them try out the new cars. And then, like, the winner gets a Matchbox car or something still in the box, and there's that sense of reward kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's interesting, but I love your idea of giving people cars that have nothing on them. Just give them the cars, let them use them as whatever the hell they want, and then they can get to take them home. Because that gives them a real sense of, okay, these are my guys now. Okay, I can do something with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the idea came from James from Games Terrain Engineering, and we were talking about it, and he actually takes it one step further. He'll bring some super glue, he'll bring some weapon bits.
I remember watching this, yeah.
Yeah, and what he'll do is, and he even said, he's like, I'll bring some weapon bits, I'll bring some super glue and cars, and I'll have people convert cars there on the spot. And that's another way to get them super pumped about playing the game.
That is amazing.
Because you get to convert. And if I had access to a 3D printer, man, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd print up a bunch of weapon bits, and I'd bring a bunch of cars down, because that's what hooks people to the game, man. It's converting those cars. There's just something to it.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like that guy though. He's all heart, ain't he? I mean, he's such a nice guy. You can tell just by watching his videos and stuff. When he's always like thinking about, new guys and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. But you have to, man, because this hobby, that's the only way you're going to be able to keep it going is you need new people.
Exactly that. Exactly that. He reminds me of Bob Ross almost, but of the GasLands version of Bob Ross. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's cool. It's a great philosophy to have that mindset, and it's kind of a mindset that's necessary for GasLands in terms of you see a new player, you don't shun them for being new because then nobody has a good time. I mean, like I've seen it happen with so many other game systems like Warhammer 40K, and I hate to say it, but I'm in London, I'm in the UK, and it's become quite toxic, the environment for that game. Like, you got people shunning new players to the point where they don't even want to play the game. And that's not fun for anyone.
Yeah.
Like, because we've all been there. We've all been that new guy.
Sure.
Yeah, we've all been that guy just staring at the table like, oh, what's this? What's that? Touching everything, or in my case, just like, maybe murmur something in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to 40K, it's because it has that same thing. It's the same thing we were just talking about, where your player pool is a little larger, so you feel a little bit more spoiled, and that whole social contract sometimes for certain people could go out the window. Now, most tabletop gamers, in my experience, have all been like super cool for the most part. But just like you said, I've ran into like those types where they take that social contact tract, they throw it out the window, and they're like, it's a miserable time playing that person. But I know I will never play this person ever again, unless I'm at a tournament and I have no choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. But that's it though. Like GasLands, to me, and what I've seen so far, it's like a campfire. Everyone sits around it and swaps stories and has a good time. And you know what I mean? You have to nurture it or else it goes out.
Well,
You know
I
what
also
mean?
noticed like the more small skirmish-based games, the communities are usually cooler. Like I played Malifaux, even like a Games Workshop game, whatchamacallit, Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl.
Blood
All the
Bowl.
guys playing Blood Bowl is super cool. Like I've never ran into like a bad Blood Bowl player.
Mm.
And Malifaux said, and Shadespire. Shadespire is another game where the scene is smaller. It is a Games Workshop game, but the people who play that game also are a tremendous, awesome group of people. And I think it's the smaller games that for some reason the communities are more tight-knit. And
Yeah.
it just makes for just a community that's just really strong.
That is 100% true. The thing is, I think with GasLands, the community is expanding exponentially. Like it's really picking up. I still think because of its nature, as we spoke about earlier, it doesn't cost that much to get into. You can spend as much as you want to. So if you do want to spend a lot of money, there are other options out there. There are vehicles which are incredibly detailed, like, model cars that have sharper edges on them. So like, they're not for kids and stuff, but they're like
Exactly.
really expensive. That is an option, but you don't have to. You can go down to a thrift store, secondhand store, or a charity shop, and you could probably find, like say $1 could get you or say $3 could get you a entire box load of beaten up old cars.
Now, the cool thing about a charity shop is you could also find the higher end, more detailed cars every once in a while at those places too.
And weapons too, like from other bits and pieces here and there.
Exactly. I wish I had better access to the what are they called? I think it's Air FX model kits.
Oh, Airfix.
Airfix.
That's the
That's
one.
what it was.
Yes.
Now, here in the U.S., they're not really common. Like, you can't find them. You have to order them. And they take like a month to get here.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so, but there's a lot of cool weapons, and they look like they're in a pretty close scale to the GasLands stuff. So you have all the World War II weapons, which are great. You have all the soldiers, which make great members. And I wish I had more access to things like that.
Yeah,
on my side.
Exactly. I mean, the Airfix kits are great because they have a wide variety of vehicles, weapons, and the vehicles themselves, like you could get a helicopter because they're so complicated and so detailed. You could easily turn it into a bus, like
Sure, sure,
with some
sure.
modifications. You know what I mean?
Now the Airfix stuff. Have you tried those things? Have you had any? Have you?
I did have some Airfix kits a while ago, but I found the major issues with Airfix is the pilots and the crew members in the vehicles are way too small. They're absolutely tiny, and they literally do not work with the 1/64 scale vehicles. However, the parts, like the components from Airfix, like the weapons and stuff, is all scaled just about right, which is really, really strange.
That's odd.
Yeah, I know, right? Ah, but yeah, it is interesting, to say the least. But yeah, no, I really do enjoy converting cars, and this is one quick thing I want to get out there quickly. What I'm working on with vehicles, especially my future plans, I'm going to be working on three separate groups of vehicles. I'm going to be working on some beginner level vehicles. I'll be doing a how-to guide on beginner stuff, then medium, sort of like, experienced, and then I'll be going into the expert tiers. But the one thing I want to do is I want to make a vow to use no plastic card at all. Just,
Oh,
yeah,
just
just
the
the
car itself.
just the car, bits and pieces that you've got lying around spare, and the card from the box that it came in, the Hot Wheels tab. That's how I made the car that won the thing to be able to get into the Time Extended 2, was actually out of the cardboard, but the whole mechanism on the back, other than the chain and the wheel, was all made from the cardboard of the box. And I'll send you a picture of it when it was in that raw form.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's definitely cool. It's always good to like come up with ways where you don't have to go out there and find like plastic car. You could actually just use the things that came with the car.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
box, the blister, whatever it is. It.
Yeah.
I love when I could repurpose things. Things for the game.
Exactly. Like I watched that video of yours, the challenge you did, where you had that car and you used like bare minimum materials. I absolutely adored that because you really showed some inventive creativity, and that's what it really is about at the end of the day.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about this game is that you can actually just go around and just repurpose things and make it look absolutely fantastic when you get it onto a car, you paint it up, you put some weathering effects on it, and people will never know, oh, this was a lollipop stick, or this was a straw, or something like that. And it's kind of like another aspect of the game that brings joy. Like, I have a good time like coming up with creative ways to repurpose stuff, and that is
Exactly.
actually kind of part of the hobby as well, which is super neat.
Exactly. Not everybody has a model supply store around. Like you got people in Australia that live far away from these places by, kilometers. They can't just go to get plastic card, but they can use the card from the back of the box and things like this, you know what I mean? And a lollipop stick and all this sort of stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it's about. It's about helping everybody equally across the board.
But I will say, man, I'm a fan of plastic card stuff.
Oh yeah, no, you can do some real
I
crazy
just,
stuff with plastic card.
but I will tell you, like, certain things, like, from plastic card, there's a company called Plastic Struct. And Plastruct is, they make all different types of things for, like, architecture purposes. When architects make a model building or whatever, so they have all types of things. They have I-beams, they have support struts, they have all types of diamond plating and textured plastic card. And but it gets a little pricey. Like, that stuff isn't cheap.
Yeah, exactly. It
Like,
does. The price mounts up.
I just went to Pro Paints, which is like a paint shop in New York. Blick Paints, actually. It used to be Pro, now it's Blick. And like, I bought 3 packs of the Plastistruct, and it was wound up being like 15, 16 bucks, and it's just some plastic rod and a couple of I-beams. And you could totally find different ways of making it yourself. I just happen, but I'm on both sides of the fence. I like finding things all the time, but I also do like going to Blick Paints and just finding the perfect, already made plastic card, which just makes life easier for me when I get back to the modeling table.
Yeah, exactly. It's about, well, you got both ends of the spectrum. You've got the ease of access. If you have it and you can easily afford it, then do it. If you don't, then there are always other alternatives. Here's a cool tip for anyone listening. If you live near a thrift store or charity shop or secondhand store, look for really cheap secondhand jewelry stuff like chains and stuff, especially the really fine ones. You might find some for 65 cents or 50p or whatever, but that makes great chain for wrapping around your vehicles, especially if you're trying to have something really have this sort of Mad Max look, especially if you want to attach the harpoon to something. Use a chain. Use something like that. Think outside the box. You got to look at stuff no longer as everyday items, but as potential GasLands car conversion bits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself now going through sections in stores that I normally didn't go into, like the sewing section.
Yeah, I know, right?
So now you got this, I'm 6'2". You got this big 6'2" dude, doesn't look like he's in the sewing too much, and he's rummaging through all the sewing, blisters.
Yep. I know exactly how you feel. You had me going around there was this secondhand jewelry section of this store, which was they had all this junk stuff they were throwing away. And I was looking for chain for the vehicles and stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea, man.
Yeah, and I'm around 6 foot something. I can't remember last time I got measured, but I've got a 1 foot tall mohawk on the top of my head. So you have this dude who's, I've got this jacket covered in spikes, and I'm going around looking for this stuff in the women's section, and people are looking at me what the hell is he doing here? I'm just I'm just looking for bits for toy cars.
Just looking for some chain, man. Looking for some chain.
Exactly, right? But it's great though, because sure, you may have some moments where you leave your comfort zone, but the payoff is just so worth it. When you're so happy and pleased with yourself with that end result, there's no greater feeling.
Exactly. Now, all right, so I wanted to ask you, so on your car that you had in the time extended 2, right?
Yeah.
You had a lot of weathering effects on there.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do to get your weathering effects?
All right. I use Games Workshop Citadel paint. I go over with a basic metal color, and then I'll water down some of the browns and things like this and go over it, but dry it quick enough with a hairdryer that only some of it sticks, and then shake it a little, get the excess off, and then dry brush over again with a similar steel color, and then go over with a really dark gray, like you'd have a primer, like when they prime vehicles and stuff, and then go over in the base paint and start the procedure all over again. And then eventually you get this really weathered look. I've been weathering things like this now. God, I started painting like this in, I think it was 2002 or something. That was when I started weathering practice and whatnot. And you know what? Weathering is completely down to 2 things. 1, you gotta have a little patience, and 2, it's only done when you're happy with it. You can have something with only barely a couple of scratches, and that can be it. Or you can have something that looks completely rusted out, and, that's fine also. It's about finding that happy medium where you sit.
So when you do your rust effects, it's all paints?
All paints, no powders.
That's cool. Actually, when Citadel came out with their washes, it was like a game changer for me.
Yep, liquid talent.
Exactly. And I'm talking about the washes they have now, not the they used to have inks. And
oh, I remember those.
Yeah,
the
inks
flesh wash.
Exactly. The inks were okay, but they would dry a little too glossy for me. and the pigment was a little too strong in those, in my opinion, because they weren't washes; they were inks.
Yeah.
And people have to know there's a difference between those.
Yeah.
But when they
huge
came
difference.
out, exactly. But when they came out with their washes, like, I don't know what it is. Like, their recipe for washes is really good.
It is pretty brilliant. There's another paint I'd like to recommend. I've got it over here somewhere. It's not a Citadel paint. It's a Vallejo acrylic metal color airbrush thing. It's chrome. I'm not sure what these numbers mean. It's 77.0707. For anyone who knows Vallejo, that probably makes sense. But it's a really good chrome color for GasLands cars. It's a real good bare metal kind of color, because if you leave it plain, it's fine. You go over in a Citadel wash, however, and it changes the game dramatically. I mean, it looks like a whole new paint almost. It's amazing.
Yeah. And when you're doing weathering effects, something a lot of people should know is when you're using these washes, try all the colors, man. Like, try and just do, take a little piece of plastic card or a little piece of paper, something plastic, and paint on the metal color, paint on the colors you're using, and try different washes on them, because sometimes different colored washes just really make great weathering effects. Because when you look at weathered metal, you sometimes get that like rainbow-esque tint when it gets weathered. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's a little bluish, a little bit of like a light greenish, and you could really get those effects with a lot of the washes of the different colors, like blues and your purples and your greens, and especially green. Like, green is a staple wash that when I wash metal, I throw green in a lot because it gives it that old weathered look. Like, it wasn't just sitting there, and it's like just turning like that, like really weathered color, which is before rust. That color you get before it turns rusty.
Well, that's it though, right? When it comes to cars, in the real world, especially classic cars, and here's a good example that you'll see in the States, where depending on where a vehicle has been in terms of its lifespan, like in which state, the climate affects it dramatically in terms of what goes on with the oxidation of the metal itself. It's pretty
definitely.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a couple of cars where I have some of the weathering powders, and just like you were saying, depending on where the car came from. So if you're in a place that's like in a very sandy area, the rust effect is very different than if you're in a place that is like for more like humid.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. And also, if people are looking for inspiration with their vehicles, look up what we're talking about here with the real world stuff, because where the rust forms actually changes as well. Like in like, say, Nevada desert, you'll have like a lot of rust in some of the more exposed areas, like on the outside of the body. As well, if you went down to maybe more swampy area, you'd have lots of rust around the wheel wells and like the recessed corners of the vehicle.
Because in the desert, it's getting hit with sand. It's constantly getting blasted with sand. The wind is blowing sand around. And you get it on more of the exposed overall body of the car. And just like you said, in the swampy area, you're driving through and the bottom is getting wet with the mud and all the grime. And
the humidity.
And it stays like around the bottom of the frame.
Well, that's exactly it. Yep. It is pretty good. I mean, this is another thing, like, this is what I really adore about this hobby, is the fact that it introduces so many different aspects. You can have guys which are hardcore sci-fi, and you can go with a team of hover cars if you want. Or if you're a military enthusiast, you can have tracked vehicles if you want, and just use your tanks even. Like, like maybe use the tracks from them on a buggy. And I saw one of those on the Facebook group, and it looked amazing. Or you can go clean cut spy cars, or you can go Mad Max, and there's so many different avenues.
You go Tokyo Drift, whatever you want to do.
I got a buddy who's done that, and I'm hoping to have him on a battle report I plan to do in the future. I'll put that up on the channel, and people can see, like, the variety that people create. You know what I mean? You really get there's so much potential in this game, like for You
Well,
know.
James Hall got me so freaking jealous, dude, because he tossed up a video,
Hmm.
and in that video they had this huge tournament for GasLands. It was like the first
Oh
huge
yeah.
tournament, and just seeing all the different cars that people brought to the table was just a fun video to watch. There was so many good conversions out there, and that's what I really adore about this game. And the topic has been brought up on Facebook before, being so I just lost my whole train of thought.
No,
But
it's fine.
but the topic has been brought up before. It's like, do you people want, official kits
Oh.
released by the company? Maybe like weapon kits, a couple of cars, or whatever.
My biggest fear with that is I'm hoping it sort of doesn't go that way for one reason is because back in the old days, GW, when they used to have loads of stores all over the place, they'd have a strict rule of if it doesn't have any Games Workshop pieces on it, you
Yes,
can't use
I
it.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so
And
dumb.
yeah, and if there's more of these official tournaments coming, I'd hate to arrive with like all my Gasland stuff, which by then would be ancient, and they'd be like, "Oh well, these aren't official Gaslands pieces. You can't compete."
Well,
It's-
I don't think that would happen with GasLands. I don't think it would go that far. And the only what I was thinking of, you're gonna lose that variety.
Yeah.
If people start just going out and buying the kits, you're just gonna see the same kits over and over
Yeah.
again. And a lot of people on the Facebook already said that too. They were like, you have a lot of the people were against kits because of that very reason.
Yeah.
And I'm on the fence. I'm on like both sides of the fence, just like I was with like Plasticard and stuff, where I don't think they should come out with cars per se, but I wouldn't mind seeing like, more official access just to like weapons in the right scale, some riders in the right scale, drivers or whatnot. And there are
Yeah.
other companies doing that, and I would like to see more of that.
You know what? That's just given me a brilliant idea. What would be really nice is if they were going to do something along those lines, have the items be sponsored themed, like maybe Rutherford weapons
Sure.
and Rutherford drivers, and then you've got like, then you've still got the variety because then there's so many different sponsors. It's not just bam, this is Gaslands, as in typical General A machine gun. Everybody has the same machine gun type deal.
And maybe
That-
I'm just saying that too. Also, and I'm agreeing with you, is because I think that's the hardest thing to find when you're making Gaslands cars. Like, I played a lot of games in the past. You played a lot of games in the past, and when it comes to like the newer players, they either don't have access to a lot of cool bits and stuff, and they don't know to look for like people who sell parts on Facebook and things like that, and having a more official place just to buy certain things would be cool. Like the riders and drivers and crew members, those are like the hardest part to get right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's-
it is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's the hardest part to get right. It's the hardest thing to find. As a matter of fact, when I saw Mad Cars come out with their stuff, I was so excited because it's pretty like high detailed figures at that scale, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was looking for. And I would like to see more of that.
I watched your unboxing for that. I'd like to ask the question, like, how are you finding them now? Like, after you've like had them for a while.
I think they're great.
That's awesome.
As
Yeah, I was-
compared to what's out there, when it comes to this scale, which is like what it's 164 or 20 millimeter, right?
yeah,
When it comes to like crew members or humanoid figures, everything that's out there right now, like the detail to like what I want to see was always subpar.
yeah. There's a couple of recommendations I have. Then, I would say check out the Devil's Run Route 666 miniatures.
Yeah, that stuff is nice.
It is pretty well detailed, and the material that these things are made from is super easy to work with. It doesn't shatter. It's sort of like a semi-flexible kind of resin, so it's very forgiving. It also means you can squeeze people into like, gun ports that you've drilled into your car
Right.
and have them physically sitting out, and I'll send you some pictures of that type of setup. But yeah.
That is the one thing with the Mad Cars figures. They're all super detailed, but the resin isn't as flexible as like you were saying with like the Route 66 stuff. The resin, it's not like brittle where like it's gonna snap at every second, but it's not flexible in any way.
So it's sort of like the middle ground between Ramshackle Games, which produces drivers and things like this for 20 millimeter scale. Their resin is very brittle. It chips, it snaps, and it cracks.
That could be frustrating.
Oh, I can tell you how many heads I have lost of drivers.
Especially in that scale, man, because everything is so like fine that if it's brittle, it's going to snap easily because there's nothing to it. It's like everything's super small.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I found really frustrating was I like to convert my miniatures, like the even the little dudes I put in the cars. I like to mix it up a bit, right? So maybe swap some heads between different bodies and all that good stuff. And when you chop off a head, when it's that brittle, it can sometimes crack and you've severed off half of the torso, and that's shattered into 3 pieces, and at that scale it just looks like, splinters, and the head is gone off into the nowhere zone along with all the the left sock from a washer dryer.
You're not gonna find a head in that scale. It's like if that thing snaps off and flies across the room, it's gone.
Exactly that.
You'll get very lucky. I've lost, bits on larger models, like like a Games Workshop model. I'll chop an arm off and it falls off the table, and I'm like, come on, it just fell off the table. I heard it hit the floor. Why isn't it near me? Like, where is it?
It's in that parallel dimension. That's where it is.
I don't know what happens exactly. It hits a dimension. It goes somewhere else because I've moved my table. I one time moved my table like out of the room.
Oh,
because it was a bit I really needed, and then when like I find it, I'm like, why is it under the fridge?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Why is it,
how did it get there?
How did it get there? Like, what kind of bounce did this thing take where it actually hit the floor in such a way that it bounced into the other room? And I'm being serious, man. I'm actually being serious. I have my painting station in my living room, and this thing bounced into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Granted, it's the next room. It's not like I go downstairs or nothing. But it's like what kind of crazy bounce did this thing take that it flew into the other room?
That is pretty crazy. It sounds like it entered, like it broke the fabric of reality. It was so small and just popped up somewhere else, like teleported.
It's nuts.
It is pretty out there. I mean, the thing is, that's the problem with such a small scale, that like especially with GasLands, if you make a similar mistake that I may have done recently. Like, I got this 1/64 scale tractor because I really wanted the wheels and some of the engine components because they're exposed. So I took a saw to it, so I was sawing it down the middle, and then I took my drill to it and I was taking it apart, and the engine had all these little plastic pipes and piping and stuff I really wanted to save, but it all came apart, and half of those pipes will probably turn up when I'm moving to a different apartment, I'll never see those again. And that's the problem with such a small scale.
That is the issue. And what I recommend, and it's a little thing that I've learned over time just with working with this stuff, is that when you're chopping up these bits, I like to put them sometimes on a towel or like a cloth, and put my, just get as much as my hand over the bit as I can, and then you cut into it. This way it doesn't bounce. Or it doesn't, like, ricochet off into nowhere land.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, a lot of times if I'm cutting, like, it's like a small bit off the end of a gun maybe, but I want to save that bit, or like a hand or a head, whatever, I'll, put it on, like, a soft cloth or rubber material, something that I have like near me. A book,
Exactly.
a book even has a little bit of like softness to it. So I'll put it on there, and then I'll put my hand. I'll like cut my hand over it, and
Oh
then
yeah.
cut down into it. This way, it won't pop off and go flying.
See, that's what I should have done. Like, I have a rubber mat I usually do this stuff with, but this tractor had arrived, and I'd been waiting forever for it to get here because I wanted to do a conversion, and I was like, oh, so happy it's finally here. I'm just gonna take it out of the box and start working with it now. And I was in the worst place for it. I was in a room where there was a carpeted floor, and the carpeted floor had patterns on it, which are very, well, disorientating to say the least.
Right.
Yeah, and I was looking for a gray engine pipe that could have been anywhere. It might as well have entered the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So
If
that
there's a
piece is
pattern
forever
on the
gone.
floor, it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that.
Now, when
And,
you were talking about not using plastic card, I thought you were going in the in one direction where whatever parts you were going to put on the car,
Oh, yeah.
you were
Well-
going to actually take off of other cars.
Oh, I've done that plenty of times.
You know what I'm saying? Like, don't
yeah.
use any fabricated stuff, but
Yeah.
actually use parts from other cars, like if you were in GasLands.
Yeah. Well, that's relatively easy, but at the same time, you got to remember, if you was in the GasLands universe, right, and you've managed to win enough fights to accumulate components from other vehicles, you're gonna turn up and find a gun at some point, like a vehicle weapon, because you'll only get so many exhaust pipes until you finally find a gun.
Of course. Right, exactly.
Yeah, but I love that though. The whole, build it as if you were in the GasLands universe. You know what? You should make that a challenge, especially to all the other YouTubers out there doing the GasLands stuff. Do a challenge where build a vehicle, but only using stuff you would have maybe found, like in the GasLands universe.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like,
That's a good idea.
Like, take a car, take a couple of cars, chop them all up, and make one car.
Merge them
get one
together.
thing- exactly. Get one thing going, and you'll get a lot of cool stuff that way, too.
Yeah, exactly. Some more variety, and that's what it's all about.
Now, before we close this out and head out, what's your next project? Like, what are you going to work on next?
All right. Well, I've ordered a bunch of stuff specifically for content for my channel, like building stuff. And this is what I want to focus on is I plan on building a couple of teams. I want to build a Rutherford team, which is very simple, using some of the auto kill parts and the Ken Derby wheels, which are amazing. And I want to do a realistic movie realism level buzzard build that anybody can do with just the cardboard from their boxes and chopping up cars, no vehicle weapons, basic back to basics type stuff. You know what I mean? Like, as you said earlier, just chopping up cars and merging them and actually replicating the movie ones, if not one for one, but some level close. Like I did with the Barracuda car.
Yes.
It's that kind of deal. Like, but I want it to be simple enough that anyone can do it. Maybe someone wants to get into GasLands and they love buzzards. There's a real love for the buzzards out there for some reason.
They're cool, man. They're just cool.
Yeah.
It's like, you got these smaller cars, almost like a buggy, just covered in spikes and rust. They're just cool.
Yeah, they are pretty cool, and they have those huge buzzsaws. But I want to do a build video, a build series, if you will, on how to make those with just a cardboard from the old box and maybe some paper even, and chopping up other cars and merging them to make movie quality stuff.
That'll
You know what I
be
mean?
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm
Wish
looking
me
forward
luck.
to that. I am going to do one of the buzzards, I think it was, where it was a Volkswagen buggy.
Oh yeah, I know what you're
And
talking
the
about.
one where they don't have it that doesn't have a hood, but it has like rods as the hood, bars as the hood.
Yeah,
So
that's
they took bars and bent them in the same shape as the buggy hood, and I'm kind of been wanting to do that for a while.
that I know what you're talking about. That buzzard vehicle, the grill on the front of that is actually, funny enough, a battered grille from a Holden panel van from the 1950s, I think it was. Like I know how these vehicles are constructed. The body shell of that looks identical to those old VWs, right?
Right.
And it was actually this secondhand kind of battered car they found, and I think it was called something like the Dinger or something. It's weird. It's all in how they made the cars for Mad Max. Check it out. It is absolutely awesome, fantastic inspiration material.
Oh yeah, I'll sometimes go in and then I'll put in a search concept art from Mad Max or Fury Road or whatever it is. And a lot of the concept art that didn't make it to like the final movies is also fantastic.
Oh yeah, it is pretty great. Like what about did you see the Mustang they were going to do, but it didn't make it into the movie, where it's up on the monster truck, well, not monster truck tires, like off-road wheels, and you got like the 3 dudes packed into it. It looks amazing. I'll post you a picture so you can show the folks in this video.
Oh, cool. I'll definitely look at that. Now, my next project I think I'm going to work on is a war rig, man. I haven't done a war rig yet. And I've kept on putting it off. I finally found a decent war rig frame. It's a Hot Wheels truck.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a couple of Hot Wheels trucks, but I just wasn't happy with the front truck itself. And I finally found one that I was happy with. So that's going to be a cool base. Like, I was looking for a really cool base because I kind of want to do a war rig where I want to actually use the front cab. I you know, like, there's so many people that do war rigs, and what they do is they take the front cab and they basically 86 it, and they'll stack like different types of cars on top of one another to get that Fury Road look, the way they had theirs done up. And
there's a bit too much of that though these
days, in my
opinion.
It's a little bit too much. Like, there's a little bit too much going on, and I wanted to try and just use the actual cab itself and modify that, but have it still kind of just have that original. It's like, it's a big truck, you know. Yeah. It's like there's nothing wrong with barreling through the wastelands in a big truck.
Well, it'd make more sense that you would have the access to a big truck rather than have the access to a big truck and a horde of vehicles that instead of using as combat vehicles, you're just going to strap to it anyway.
Exactly. So I kind of want to try something like that. And I've been looking around. And the crazy thing is, I was in Target yesterday, and this was a major inspiration to me wanting to make this build. They have a golf cart, right? But let me tell you, on this golf cart, there is this giant, massive engine. It's the biggest engine I've seen on a Hot Wheels car.
No way.
It's just giant with a big belt, everything. It's super nice looking. So I'm going to take that golf cart engine and slap it into the truck, because it's just it's an engine that just looks fit for like a war rig.
Oh, I look forward to seeing that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, like, I know they had it on the golf cart. It's probably like a joke or a parody, you know, vehicle, because it's basically giant engine, small tiny golf cart. That's what the original car is. But this engine is just, it's really nice. So I was like, I'm definitely going to slap this on the war rig, and I'm super pumped about that. So I got a war rig coming up, and I'm painting up the biomechanical cars that I did.
Yeah, no, I saw those. I liked how you used the Tyranid parts and whatnot. I really found that to be quite unique. You know, it's not something you see every day. I think those are the first biomechanical cars I've ever seen anyone do.
Yeah, and so I'm painting those up. They've been on the painting table for a little while now. I had a commission here and there that kind of got in the way, so I'm going to be working on those.
That's awesome, though, man. Like, you got a really good creative mind, and that's really important, especially when making content for things like GasLands and stuff like that. So yeah, man, keep at it. You're doing an awesome job.
So before we go, dude, what is your channel that you're coming up with now?
Oh, my channel is Vengeful Raider. I've got a lore video up for GasLands. It's the complete lore from the 2-time extendeds and the main book combined for anyone who wants to know the backstory of the game and the universe. And I've got my first video basically detailing what I plan to do on the channel up there, and I've also got a test video I put up, which is pictures of my Raider warband, you know, like my Mad Max themed cars.
Well, I'm going to have all this linked in the description. So if you guys are listening to this, jump on down, click on that link, and that lore video is amazing. Just get on that video.
That.
I watched it. I had a great time, and it was fantastic. All right, dude. So, man, thanks for coming on here and just talking games with me. It was a blast.
Been a pleasure. Yep. Thank you so much for having me. I have been Vengeful Raider, and I'll see you in the wasteland.
All right, man. Have a good one. And everybody in the GasLands community, everybody out there playing games, get your games in. Have a good time. Later. Fantastic.